All right, welcome. So this video is motivate your mind, move your body. This is quite an interesting topic, at least to me. I've never seen anything like this, but it is a topic that I wanted to discuss, and I think it's a video worth watching for you guys on self-improvement, and especially for those who might feel like they're stuck, like they can't take action. The concept is essentially just the idea of utilizing your mind to initiate action. I used to think that action was solely physical, but as I got into my research about the mind and your brain, and as I learned more about action, procrastination, and productivity, I realized that it's more mental than anything else. The body follows the mind. So if you motivate your mind, you get your mind into motion, you get your mind active on a task, that is going to be the quickest and most effective way to get your body into that task and to get yourself physically working on that task. So you mentally get yourself into that state first, and then you can initiate it. For those of you guys who are serious on self-improvement and you'd like to take it to the next level, or you need better education or direct coaching on how to do so, meaning you would like help implementing some of the information that I teach here and some of the information you might be learning from other people as well, you can go down to the first link in my description and you can send me a DM to get early access to my Academy of Self-Mastery. My Academy of Self-Mastery is going to be a community, so it's going to be full of a bunch of people on the same path as you, similar goals, and we're all going to be working together in order to achieve all of our goals and to progress as a whole. But the program itself will include a community where you can talk to any other members within it. The classroom will have a bunch of in-depth, in-detail courses on all of the different things within self-improvement. So one is dopamine detoxing, one is routine mastery. I teach you step by step how to create your own structure, your own routine, and how to follow through on that. Diet, fitness, mental health, meditation, sexual transmutation, so on and so forth. I'll be adding a ton of new courses as the program progresses over time. So if that's something you guys are interested in, you can go ahead and click that first link in the description. But without further ado, let's get into the rest of this video. So the way that I realized that controlling my mind led to action was, as I said before, when I started to get into my research about specifically the mind and also about productivity and procrastination, I came back to the same conclusion pretty often, and that was that the mind was more important when it came to action than the body itself. So yes, one way to overcome procrastination, and one pretty effective way to do so, is to just force your body to take the actions, right? So I did that with my video today. I got here, I knew I had to record, but as soon as I got all my stuff set up, I had to go to the bathroom, whatever, and then I come back and I'm sitting here and I just did not want to record. And it wasn't like oh yeah, fuck this, I don't feel like it. It was just, I noticed I was in a good state to record, and then all of a sudden I wasn't. And so now all of a sudden I'm able to press record and continue, but somehow I'm not in that like mental state to do so, right? And so I applied both tips, to be honest, but one of the things that I did was I just kind of forced myself to open up to the page that my script is on and then press record on the video and just go from there. And the other thing that I did was, while I noticed I was procrastinating, I recentered my mind onto getting the task done and not the stress of the task or the resistance of the task. And so I was able to get myself into a flow state just by entering it mentally first and then doing it physically. But the same conclusion pretty much every time, whether it was talking about procrastination, productivity, or the mind. Yes, making the body do things is an effective way to do so, but what I've found the most effective way is to initiate through the mind, initiate through getting the mind active on the task, and then the body will follow. So your body is essentially just a pawn. It just follows the instructions of your brain. And so you, as the conscious element, need to control the brain. Otherwise, the brain will control your entire life, right? Your mind will control your entire life. And so with this, when you're unconscious, your brain is controlling your entire life. It's dictating all of your actions, all of your decisions. But the same is true for when you're trying to consciously do things, or if you're trying to make change in your life. The mind is still the unit by which you need to use in order to control the body, but you need to first learn to control the mind. So that's what this video is talking about. Basically just teaching you how to utilize your mind to initiate action. And then how to also follow through on action through that. So the significance of the mind when it comes to action. For most on this path, self-improvement, for most like me, we understand the basic concept that when it comes to achieving a goal or, creating change in your life, it starts in the mind, right? It starts with visualization of it. It starts with, creating the plan, creating the process, creating the protocol, seeing yourself in that position, in that state, and using your brain as a means of figuring out how to create it without a real life tangible example of that thing. It's like with a house, you have a blueprint that somebody else created off of blueprints that have been created in the past. And so it's a trustworthy process, right? When it comes to achieving your goals, we don't have that. The brain is the closest thing we have to that, which is essentially our brain's power and ability to create a vision and then also work through the steps and the processes in order to create it and make it real. So basic things like that, or not basic things, complex things like that start in the mind. But even basic action starts in the mind. All right, even things like recording, like training, like reading, journaling, meditating. All of these things start with a thought first. They all start with you initiating that process in your mind. And so when someone doesn't have much control over their mind, they do have very little control over their actions as well. And that isn't because they're impulsive, it just means they don't have the power to turn off the impulses of the brain. Not that they don't have the ability, they don't know how to use said ability. So when you control your mind, you can then control the actions that you take. And this can refer to procrastination and actions that you need to take but don't want to take, but also actions that your brain wants to take but you shouldn't take. So whatever type of action you're referring to, both of them are started and initiated within the brain, within the mind, right? So all action starts in the mind. And so when we envision something or we set our sights on something, right? We set the intention in our mind to achieve something and then follow through on that intention. That's how we create change. That's how we take intentional action, right? These are the actions that would bring you towards your goal or your vision, right? Intentional action. Action driven by the intention to achieve what you're going to achieve, right? And so the next thing is how to use the brain to initiate action. And the simple way to break this down is this. So when you want to take an action, right? Let's say I wake up, I have my schedule set. So every day I wake up and I either come here to record or I train. And then I do the alternate. So if I trained that day, I go and record right after. If I recorded, I go and train right after. So I wake up, I do my morning routine and everything. I'm ready to go. I don't want to go to the apartment. I don't really want to record today. You know what I mean? It happens. Some days you just don't feel motivated. I love making content, but sometimes I don't feel like making content. Sometimes I just want to, fuck off and do nothing. But I have goals. So that means I have to take the action. What do I do in that situation? I have talked about this before. Most of the time what I actually do is I just ask myself, who am I? That question always brings me back to what I need to be doing, just because of the identity I've cultivated reflects, entrepreneurship, athleticism, and being productive to the absolute best of my degree, or best of my ability. So therefore, that's what I'd usually do. But specifically utilizing the tool of initiating action through the mind, what I would do if that was the tool that I chose to use. And the reason I told you that is just because that's my most effective tool, is just who am I, right? Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Well, duh, I'm gonna go record the video. And that is actually one way of doing this, right? Because what that's doing is making my mind answer the question. My brain has to say, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, I'm supposed to be recording those videos. And so therefore it puts my brain into alignment with it, and then my body can then take the action to follow. But a simpler way of doing this would be just to say, okay, I have this resistance to doing the work, right? I want to record, or I need to record, and I have this resistance to doing it. Well, what I'm going to do there is I'm going to not fight the resistance, not focus on it, not like do all this other stuff, not distract myself and do something else, but just set in my mind the intention of achieving the goal, or like like finishing and completing the task, right? So just set the intention in your mind. So like, let's say what this would look like is I need to record. I was just doing this. I needed to record, but like, whatever, after I got set up and I went to the bathroom, and then as soon as I was done in the bathroom, my state was off, right? I couldn't quite focus in or lock in because of that. Not because of anything specific, just, my state had been altered. I no longer felt motivated. Whatever. The way I overcame this was not by thinking about, oh yeah, like I gotta get all this stuff done though, and like try to force myself through the resistance and force myself into action. What I did was I literally realized I was thinking so much about the work that I was overthinking what it actually was, right? If I would just relax, turn on the camera, start talking, it'd be fine. But because I'm thinking so much about the amount of effort it would take to complete each video, I'm overwhelming my brain. So what I did was I just ignored all of that. I realized I was doing it, ignored that, and focused on the intention in my mind, which was to get some videos out, right? I have a trip coming up. I have to record ahead of time. So I have to like build up a good supply of uploads. I need, I think it's about 18 uploads or something like that, 18 videos in a week. So that's a lot of recording in one space of time. So therefore, I had to not think about that. I had to think about the intention of completing the task, right? So what it tangibly looks like would be I had this resistance. I realized, there's very much importance to me completing this task, and I don't have to focus on so much of the tension and resistance. You know what I mean? And so I was able to say, all right, well, I'm just going to focus on the intention that I have to complete this video. And then, as I got into doing the motions of that, I got into the flow, into the state of it. So the simple way to do this is to just set the intention in your mind when you feel that resistance instead of fighting the resistance. So the next section is how to maximize output through motivating your mind. So using deadlines or objectives to get your brain to focus and so get more done. What I mean by this is essentially set deadlines for yourself. So like, for example, I had a routine mastery course that I'm writing out, and I procrastinated writing it for probably like 3 or 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden I got it all done in a couple days. And the way I did this was I set a deadline for myself and I set an objective. So the first thing I did was I said, okay, I need to see like how much I'm actually capable of writing in like one work bout. So I said, I'm not going to eat anything today. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to go first thing in the morning to the apartment, and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to write until I literally can't write anymore. My brain can't focus anymore, and I need to go home and eat. And that's what I did. And I got, I think, 1.5 modules done or something like that, which for the size of these modules is quite a bit. It's a lot. So I got about 1 module done plus some for the next module. And so I was able to gauge how much I can get done in one day if I'm really focused. And so from there, the next thing that I did was I set a deadline. This was a Friday. I set the deadline for that Sunday, meaning I had to write like this and actually a little bit more for the next 2 days in order to complete the project. And it worked to the point that I didn't fully finish the script, not because this stuff, but because I had to go back to recording because I ran out of videos. So, I went back to working on other stuff for a bit, but up until the point where I had to switch back to recording, I'd made more progress writing that script than ever before, and we're very close to finishing it. I'm like, finishing up all the final bits right now, and I'm going to edit it, and then I'll try to record it before I leave. But if not, I'll record it when I get back anyways. So the point with this is setting the objectives and the deadlines made me focus and therefore get more of the work done, because my brain understood, especially with the first example, my brain understood, like, I'm not leaving until I've done the work. So I have to just do as much work as I can, because there's no point focusing on anything else. Like, I have to complete this thing before I leave. And that mentality, even though I didn't complete the whole thing, caused me to get more work done than I would on any other normal day, right? So setting objectives, setting deadlines, basically giving your brain an incentive to focus now, because if it doesn't have the incentive, it'll keep being like, well, yeah, I can do that later, I can do that tomorrow. But if you set the objective of like, well, no, the deadline's 2 p.m. today, like, I have to do it right now, your brain's going to be more quick to focus, and you're going to be able to not just take action, but you'll be able to produce more within that block of time. The next thing is visualization. So when you find yourself stuck, this refers to athletes a lot, but you can use this with your work and entrepreneurship as well. But when you become stuck on something, you can just visualize yourself working through the problem and overcoming the problem, right? So if it's entrepreneurship, it's problems. If it's a sport and let's say, you're a striker, or for snowboarders, this is like very, very important. So I'm going to use the snowboarding example, but you can translate this to soccer. You can translate this to any sport, really. Most athletes do use visualization, but snowboarding is my favorite example because I think it's one of the most important sports to use visualization in, particularly because most of the time we're doing tricks that nobody's ever done before, or that very few people have ever done before, and to that same degree, for the amount of people who have done it, there's an even smaller percentage of people who've recorded themselves doing it. So it's very, very difficult to find good examples and good training on how to do most of these tricks. So what's the alternative? What's the next best thing? What else can we do? And that is simply to visualize the trick, right? So every time I'm going to drop in for a trick, especially if it's a new one that I've never done before, I'm going to visualize myself landing it, doing it perfectly, landing it, and riding away, so that I have a reference point for how to do it moving into the trick. Because like I said, not a lot of other people will be able to give me those examples. And another reason this is so important is because it initiates action, but it helps your body to have a reference point for how to do the thing, right? So like, for example, with most things, you can watch somebody else do the thing you're talking about before you go and try it yourself. That is a similar reference point. So when you're stuck, you find yourself stuck, or you just want to be able to produce more, visualization is a good way to get your brain essentially living through the actions, living through the reality of having that thing and doing that thing. And so therefore, it is essentially a repetition for doing it, even though you haven't actually done it yet, at least as far as your brain is concerned. So then when you actually go and do it, your body is more prepared to do it because your brain has one of those repetitions already. And so it has that reference point to be able to do it more accurately. And if you can see yourself doing it correctly, you can trust it a little bit more, and that can help you to beat procrastination as well. The next thing is concentrating mental energy onto the task. So this one is really, really good, really important. If you just focus your mental energy, concentrate it onto what you're doing right now, the specific task you're doing right now, you basically force yourself to get into 100% alignment with that task. And so therefore you will initiate a flow state from that typically. And if not a flow state, you will at least be able to focus and work and get a lot done from that. So concentrating your mental energy, which is really just taking all of these random thoughts popping up and like pulling you away from what you're doing, and just cutting them off and recentering, refocusing that same energy onto exactly what you're doing right now. And the last thing is dopamine and intrinsic motivation. So if your dopamine isn't regulated, you're not going to be able to work to the same capacity, and it's not going to feel as good to work. So like, you want to have regulated dopamine receptors, you want to have intrinsic motivation. So what does this mean? This means that you basically want to feel motivated not because you'll get something at the end, but because you internally feel the motivation, the desire to work and put forth effort. So dopamine is the neurochemical that drives us towards achieving something separate from what we currently have. So achieving something outside of our current reach, our current grasp. With that means that we are able to work, we have more energy, we have more focus. So when we have good sensitive dopamine receptors and a good amount of dopamine in our brains, then we essentially have this intrinsic motivation. We have this internal desire to work and put forth effort. And so by cultivating this, by either healing our dopamine receptors, going on a dopamine detox, or just creating more internal reasons to achieve the goal. Like for me, my deepest reason for doing the work that I do has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with the fact that I feel like this is the most effective way to teach myself the knowledge. So that is an internal motivation. It's like, this is something that I am driven to do because it like directly impacts me. It directly impacts my knowledge base, my ability to perceive, conceive, and then translate knowledge, right? And also my ability to achieve things in my regular life because I'm teaching myself this knowledge on a deeper basis. And so that is a motivation that comes from within. That isn't a motivation of, I want money, I want material, I want, sex, power, money. I think that those are the three things that, like the worldly pleasures, right? The things that the world offers you are sex, money, and power. And to focus on those things is to focus extrinsically. So if those are the motivators you have, you're extrinsically motivated, meaning your motivation is coming from outside of you. Intrinsic motivation means that something within you drives you to do those things. So like knowledge and information is something of the self, right? Expansion of consciousness is something of the self. Evolution and growth is something of the self. So if you're motivated by these things, you're motivated by intrinsic desires, which means you're motivated by things that live internally within you. And this is the more permanent, these are the more permanent rewards. And so it should be the permanent motivation source that you find, because material motivation can only get you so far. Materialistic motivation can only get you so far. But intrinsic motivation can take you all the way. So the body actually acts fully in accordance with the mind. So the body doesn't act void of the brain. The brain essentially initiates action for the body, right? The brain controls the entire nervous system, the entire vessel. And so what controls the brain? What controls the mind? This would be ego in most cases, but it should be you. It should be the consciousness. And so what you need to do is you need to take back the wheel so that you yourself can be the instructor, the director of your own body, your own will centers, right? So the body will just act in alignment with what the mind tells it to do, or within what the mind believes. So if the mind believes that you are an athlete, the body will reflect that by looking more athletic, right? If your mind believes that you are a successful entrepreneur, when you work, you will do it in such a way that is more reflective of the successful entrepreneur than the unsuccessful, 9-to-5 employee. You will have a different way of carrying yourself. Your body will literally reflect differently based on the belief systems you hold in your mind. And then by that, you will take the actions that will reinforce that identity and that belief system, but also create it physically, right? Make it a physical, tangible thing that you can experience. So the body acts in accordance with the mind. The body essentially just follows the mind. And then, so this is a little section on how to actually manifest your goals. Because I think that by taking all of this information, we can then translate it into an applicable process that we can use to achieve more of our goals. So all action starts as a thought. So you have to start in the mind. You have to visualize, right? All action starts as a thought. So find what that thought is, right? It's a thought form. There's an idea in your brain that reflects a certain reality that you could live, and that is where you should start. See in your mind both where you want to go and how to get there. So now you have this thought, you have this idea. All right, I think I want to be a professional snowboarder. Visualize exactly what that would look like first. So completely forget about everything to do with where you are right now. visualize exactly where you would want to be. If you were able to live your perfect ideal life, where would you be right now? Where would you want to be? And then you have to figure out how to get there. So now that you've clearly visualized where you actually want to be, now you have to take it and visualize how you would get there. So now you look at where you are and where your vision of where you want to be is. How separated are they? How far apart are they? For me, I figured mine isn't actually as far as I thought it was, right? There's actually just a few minor changes that would get me from point A to point B. But those few minor changes would make such a drastic difference in my life that point A and point B look like completely different realities, right? And so that's probably pretty similar for you. You'll probably find that there are actually just like a few habits that you have or a few characteristics or identities in your mind that you have that are separating you from this vision of who you want to be. And that obviously plus the actual work. There's going to be a few factors, and then there's going to be just work between point A and point B. So once you have that how to get there, that plan, and you can see like what changes can be made to actually make that real and tangible, then you focus your attention onto just taking each step. So manifestation starts by visualizing where you want to go and how you can get there, and then taking consecutive action on each of the steps to get there. Manifestation is both steps. Both pieces create one thing. Manifestation, law of attraction, whatever. Anytime somebody teaches you one void of the other, they're either giving you misinformation or they just don't understand themselves, the process. They don't understand that their actions started from creating a vision in their mind, or they don't understand that their vision in their mind drove a certain amount of a certain type of action that created their manifestation. So like both spiritual people and like, you know, the masculine, like hard masculine, you know, just grind, just work, you know, both are right if you put them together, correct? So if you have the two together, that is how you can create things in your life. So just focus on taking each step. And then continue taking action based on the intention you hold in your mind. So first thing is hold the intention in your mind. You can't just think this is where I want to go, take one or two steps, and then be like, all right, actually, fuck this. Hold on, I want to go this way. And then go back and forth. You'll never make progress in either direction. You'll be stuck right where you are. So you need to hold that vision in your mind. You need to know exactly where you want to go, and you need to hold it to be true. And then you just continue taking action. You continue moving in that direction. And if you feel like you need to get the thing to feel satisfied in that journey, in that process, that's another thing to address. You need to address the fact that your brain thinks you don't have the thing. Your brain needs to believe you can get the thing. The brain needs to believe that you already have enough as well, because otherwise you won't be able to receive anything. To those who have, more is given. To those who do not have, more is taken away. So, based on your belief system, do you have the ability to even achieve abundance? Or is your belief system telling you that this is something you can't have, and therefore you're attached to the outcome? And by attaching yourself to the outcome, you can't focus on this process here. So that is all I have for this video. If you guys enjoyed, you can click the subscribe button and the like button. But if you are interested in joining the program, the Academy of Self-Mastery, you can go ahead and click that first link in my description. Send me a quick DM. Just be like, hey man, I'm looking to get into early access. And if you have any questions about it, you can ask some questions and I'll get you sorted from there. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this was helpful. And that's all from me. And I'm out of here. Peace.